Here we go. Good evening and welcome to the September 6th regular meeting of the Novi Board of Education. I would appreciate a roll call vote from our secretary, Mr. Mena.
Trustee Cook.
Here.
Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena here. Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Trustee O'Connor.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Stevenson.
Here. Fantastic. We welcome you that are in our audience this evening, and I would appreciate if you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Terrific. Well, we do have our first opportunity for comments from the audience next. This is the first opportunity to comment on anything on our agenda or related to our agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, we would just ask that you fill out a green card that is over on the side table over there and hand it to Mrs. Holly. We do ask that you keep your comments limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak this evening? No. Seeing none, we will move on to our report to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Tonight, I'm pleased that we will have a report on our district student support services. We provide a full continuum of support and services for our students through a well-defined process for determining the level of support that a student would need. Tonight, Dr. Weber, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, will report to the board along with Darby Hoppenstedt, who is our MTSS coordinator. Dr. Weber and Ms. Hoppenstedt.
Good evening, Novi Community and School Board. It's a pleasure tonight to be here with you and to be able to share some work that the district has done and we've done over the years that we're exceptionally proud of. It's a pleasure to be here with Ms. Darby Hoppenstedt, who is our Director of 504 and MTSS, and of course, as Dr. Matthews said, I'm your Assistant Superintendent of Academics here in the district. So why? Each child we serve deserves every opportunity to find real success and a sense of belonging in our community public school district.
And when we're able to live into a framework of support, we can increase academic achievement, we can decrease negative behaviors in the classroom and in the school building. We're proactive, meaning we don't wait for students to fail, that we're able to identify problems when they arise and quickly intervene with the issues that come up. The early intervention piece is key. So not only just early intervention and when we first identify a problem or a concern, but also really looking at K-3 and understanding that when we're able to provide intervention quickly at those levels, that we're able to close gaps more quickly than we are at higher levels. And that we can reduce the number of special education evaluations by providing services for students in Gen Ed before we get to the need for a special ed evaluation or for a student to have an IEP.
So the how, really, it's a shared responsibility for MTSS. Tonight we'll be going over the superintendent goals, which are essentially the goals for our community school district. In that particular meeting, when we discussed this, one of the points that was made is the high-quality Tier 1 instruction is really at the root. What the community is going to see tonight is the commitment the district has made from a K-12 support system for our striving learners. But one of the most important things is that high-quality Tier 1 instruction is happening in every classroom, every day, for every child. That we don't simply say the people that you're about to see, the programs you're about to learn about, are the only things that are responsible for student achievement in our community school district. The school board has made a commitment to low class sizes as well. As Dr. Matthews and I have had the pleasure of walking around the district, Steve, maybe you want to jump in, but seeing the class sizes we have in our K-3 is stunning. I was in a classroom today of 17, a classroom today of 19, a classroom today of 20. It's amazing. Mr. O'Connor?
I'm just going to ask a clarification. What do you mean by Tier 1 instruction?
So Tier 1 instruction is that basic instruction that occurs every classroom, every day, every minute. So Trustee O'Connor, you and I are in a classroom, and let's say both of us need math intervention, but the core of our instruction is going to take place with that classroom teacher if we're second graders 5 days a week. We may get pulled out for an hour or two during the week, but what really needs to happen is what happens on the day-to-day basis in there.
And I would add that, so when we talk about Tier 1, we talk about high-quality core instruction, and that's for academic. So all students get that core instruction. And then for Tier 1, in the behavioral side of the framework, it's the universal expectations for students, universal behavior expectations that have been established for that school or across the grade levels.
Also, a deeply aligned curriculum, K through 12. We spent a tremendous amount of time, and really proud of our teachers, over 20,000 hours in putting it into our Atlas framework. A robust internal accountability system with actionable data. And I'm excited that believe the board's going to speak about that a little bit tonight in decisions on our district or superintendent goals. We're using a bit different approach to data and how we're looking at it. Resources allocated to support each learner, creating an equity of opportunity. Fair and equal are equity and fairness are two very different things. Fairness is about everybody getting the same. Equity is about those who need more getting more. And the students that we're talking about right now are students who definitely need more of a response. A full continuum of support for students with an IEP. We will have a later board conversation about that, but our full continuum that we support our students with IEPs is amazing, and a full range of support for our English language learners. Trustee O'Connor? Okay. So the monument, we've seen this once in a while. I'll never forget, Ms. Stevenson, you were here and asked the question. It was in this very room. It was 7 years ago. We were at a PASID meeting. And you looked at me and you said, where's our RTI model? What do we have for response to intervention? And I looked at you and I said, we don't have it. And we can't have it. And I was truthful and I looked you in the eye and said, we will have it. Tonight I can look you in the eye, Ms. Hoppenstedt can look you in the eye and say, we have it and we've done it. We couldn't make that move because we did not have an aligned curriculum 8 years ago. We did not have an aligned approach to teacher evaluation, administrator evaluation. We did not have an aligned approach to assessment. Without those fundamental building blocks, that Tier 1 building block, you really can't have a viable MTSS and RTI. So that's just the basic part of it. So I'm really glad you're at this table tonight. I didn't even think about this before the presentation, but that was a moment. Thank you.
So this is our MTSS framework that we use. It's a continuum for all students, and it identifies, so Tier 1, 80 to 90% of students are just fine with the core instruction that they receive. They're making growth, they're making progress. However, there are some students that need more. They need some supplemental support, and that's where we move into Tier 2. So 5 to 15% of students typically need some type of supplemental support, and that looks different based on academic or behavioral. And then Tier 3, Tier 3 is for our most struggling learners, and that's where they receive intensive, individualized intervention. And about 1 to 5% of students require that type of intervention.
Where do you see most of your students falling that need MTSS? Are you talking about elementary, 5th and 6th grade, 7th and 8th, high school?
Really, it's across all levels. And we have, students that come to us starting in kindergarten, and we know that students have that pre-K experience that looks different. Some don't have it at all. So we have students that come in our doors at varying levels. So we, provide support there. But we also have needed at our high school.
I don't think you quite understand the question I'm asking, maybe, and maybe I'm not framing it correctly. Where would the majority of our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students be? Do you have a lot? Do you have 300 in the middle school? Do you have 200 at the high school? That's kind of what I was asking.
Right. So, it looks different every year because our students are different every year. So, we have students that require Tier 2 intervention, and we look at, with our universal screener, we start with NWA, and we look at where they fall and make decisions. And it's really based on what the individual teacher sees as a need for the student at K4 or early K6. Tier 2 is all done in the classroom by the classroom teacher. Mm-hmm. So, we don't really, they document what they're doing, but it's really up to the classroom teacher. So, again, it's about 5 to 15% of students in each building that may need Tier 2, 1 to 5%. So whatever the number of the building is, you know how many students are there?
And the way Ms. Hoppenstead has really designed this is Trustee O'Connor and Murphy, you'll remember the days when we had lit specialists assigned to each building, and they stayed in that building, and it was a geographic setting. The move that we've made is one towards need. So as the need changes every year and we use our data, we're able to put more people where they're needed or less people where they're needed. So it's a much more agile, again, let's talk about equity, this idea of getting more resources to the places that need it. So it's really hard to calibrate where those pieces are. What you'll see, Trustee Stevenson, is the fact that we're going to have, when you see the spread of people and positions, you'll see that we have it very well covered on a base level, but there may be moves to that. It's very difficult to say where there are more or less depending.
Okay, so just for clarification, you're saying between 5 and 15% in each building is kind of the range of what you have in any given year.
Correct.
So you're not seeing that like there's a disproportionate representation in any one building.
No.
Okay.
So what are the core components of MTSS? I mentioned a universal screener, that's NWA. All students are screened at the start of the year, and that data allows us to identify who may be on the radar, and then our interventionists do digger deeping they dive a little deeper into data and history to determine the need for intervention services. So all of our interventionists have entry and exit criteria. So this is our Tier 3 interventionists. So in order to get into a Tier 3 intervention, we use very clear entry and exit criteria for that. But it all starts with NWA and using the universal screener. Evidence-based instruction and intervention. So we have our Marzano, which is a great framework for us, but we also have evidence-based intervention. We use level literacy intervention in through K-8. We use AVMR, which is the Advantage Math Recovery curriculum and instructional approach. We have universal behavior expectations, and that's something that we didn't have a few years ago. So our K4 all have PBIS in buildings. We have service delivery in tiers, so we can really say that we have Tier 2 that happens in the classroom. We have Tier 3 intervention services now for both math and literacy. And then also services for students with behavior, social, emotional issues with our social workers. We use We Progress Monitor, and that's ongoing throughout the year. So those kids that are receiving intervention, we're constantly taking a look to see, are they making the progress that we expect? And if not, we use our problem-solving process to bring people together to develop new intervention plans, or maybe make decisions based on the data to evaluate under special education or Section 504. And then we document what we're doing in the classroom. So we are ensuring that if a student is receiving some type of supplemental support, that is documented, and the progress with that intervention and support is also documented, and that follows the student. So year to year, we're not recreating the wheel, so to speak, with intervention services, or we can have that history of what a student has received. And then what we're working on this year in all of our buildings is that family and stakeholder engagement in the MTSS process.
So taking a look at that screen, there's a lot on there. Any questions that you might have from individual board members?
Mr. Cook?
You talk a lot about the academic intervention and how we're identifying the universal screen and the NWA and stuff. The behavioral side. Do we have guidelines for who's Tier 2, who's Tier 3? Are we seeing kids exiting Tier 2 and going back to Tier 1? Are we seeing kids continuing on up to Tier 3 before we... How are we seeing the kids move on the behavioral side?
So we have a host of interventions that we provide in Tier 2 that the classroom teachers provide. It may be informal behavior plans. It may be check-in, check-out systems. There's a lot of interventions that teachers can select based on the behavioral or social emotional need, and sometimes that's simply enough. But other times there's a need for our social workers to provide direct support through small group or individual. And we are starting with the universal screener this year. It's called the DESA, and that's our social emotional screener that is tied to Second Step, which is our social emotional curriculum that we use in the district, and that will be able to help us measure the progress with students' social emotional learning skills.
I heard you mention PBIS. Is that K through 12?
That's K-6 currently. Our middle school and high school are working on their universal expectations for each building.
And what's the expectancy to have that implemented
I think that we're there for this year.
for both?
Mm-hmm. We worked last year over the course of the year at the high school with our, what started as a homework committee but quickly turned into a work skills conversation and development of what we would expect our high school students to show up within the classroom around their work skills and behavior expectations within the classroom. So that's been set, and it just needs to be rolled out.
And do we have data on the number of 504s we have and what groups are needing 504s and things like that? Can we get access to that?
Mm-hmm. So we have about 250 504s across the district. We have new students that recently enrolled with 504s, so we're looking at eligibility and that in the process right now. But just to give you a bit of insight on where we were, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we may have had a handful of 504s, so we've really increased our 504 number, and we've done a lot of evaluations over the past few years to ensure that students are getting opportunity and access that they deserve based on their area of impairment.
Thank you.
So this is the huge shift that we're involved in. And that's a shift from us asking what's wrong with the student to what is happening with the instruction, curriculum, and or in the school and classroom environment that may be causing a lack of progress. What can we alter so the student will learn? This idea of saying we need to have this student fixed, or this must be why this is going wrong, rather than looking inward at ourselves, evaluating our own programming, our own delivery of that programming, and so on, is the shift that we are deeply engaged in right now. As we begin to talk about things like adaptive and technical change, what I want the board to think about is technical change are those things that are first order procedural pieces that we can put in place. You'll do X, Y, and Z. Adaptive change is this big shift of everybody in the system looking at each child and asking ourselves, what is it that we are doing or not doing that is helping that child advance and succeed? And with that, 9 years ago or so, we looked and looking at our IEPs, as Ms. Hoppenstedt said, we had, when she said handful, it was truly a handful. There were 4 504s in our district, a law that had been in place since 1974. We chose not to attend to it. What we did is over-identify students with IEPs, give students IEPs who quite frankly didn't need them, soft pedal some of those IEPs by saying things like, we'll call it a speech and language piece rather than a learning disability. And it was well-meaning in the sense that people would want to get help for kids, so let's get them an IEP. This short video right here will really show why that rush to special ed is something that we should be avoiding. Every IEP that is written should be meeting the needs of that student, and that student should really need that IEP. They need to be goal-based. They need to be measurable. They need to be actionable. They need to be something that we take very, very seriously, and this video will show why.
Special education cannot fix reading problems. Schools won't make annual yearly progress if the only intervention is to wait for special education services to kick in. We know that quality instruction is directly linked to learning problems and to learning disabilities. That instructional factors are underestimated as a cause of learning disabilities. That the skills that prevent learning disabilities can be taught, but they have to be taught early in school. That some children are placed in special education as instructional casualties because they did not get adequate instruction when it would be maximally effective. We waited for the kid to fail. We know that special education does not effectively close the gap. This is partly because identification is based on failure. But the underlying model, IQ discrepancy, has no scientific basis, and we've known this for a long time. We know that other status models that might be based on the simple determination of low achievement or on some assessment of cognitive processing are not viable alternatives, that the system itself is oriented to procedural compliance, not to services and outcomes. Special education teachers spend as much time doing paperwork and complying with procedural details as they do in instruction. It is a wait-to-fail model that will stabilize achievement deficits, but rarely remediates, rarely closes the gap.
That's pretty big. Any response or questions or reaction from the board to that video? Trustee?
Who is this guy? Who's talking?
He is a professor at
Kansas.
Psychologist.
So he's done some national research on this to come up with those conclusions.
And I need to get back to our. Oh, here we go. So our hope is that we can get to a point where we can use RTI or our MTSS process to be able to identify students for special education rather than using our cognitive and achievement testing that we've used in the past, where we've used a model of patterns of strengths and weaknesses before. We've used
Hunch.
Our gut. We've used a discrepancy model, and what we know is if we can provide high quality intervention support and students are not making progress with that intervention, then we can move on and we really exhaust all of our resources and supports in gen ed before we move to special education.
I know on the next slide, I believe the board has a hard copy of this. So what Ms. Hoppenstedt is going to take you through is really a physical, very real manifestation of the commitment we've made as a community school district in the last 8 years to our kids. I have been questioned about our asset allocation. Why is it that we put some resources here and other resources, not putting resources in other spots? And what I can confidently say is the reason that this is where we've put our resources because this is where they will matter the most. Time and money are finite things. We have to spend both of those things in a way to get the most impact for the people we serve, and those people are our children. So when I look at this list, and I really, when Ms. Hoppenstedt takes us through each one of these things, I need you all to understand how absolutely rare it is to have a community school district that's made this kind of commitment K-12.
So as our Dr. Weber said, we are fortunate to have this full continuum of support. Looking at math intervention, we had K-4 math intervention at 2 of our buildings, our 2 title buildings, Village Oaks and Orchard Hills. We did not have K-4 math intervention at our other 3 elementaries, Novi Woods, Parkview, and Deerfield. This year we're able to offer math intervention services for students K-4, and we're incredibly proud of that. ELA intervention, also known as our literacy support or with our literacy specialists, we have that support across all 4 elementary buildings, and those individuals are in those buildings full-time. We have social workers in each of our buildings, and our social workers are fortunate to have low special ed caseload numbers, and that means that they're able to provide more intensive support for our gen ed students. They're able to get into classrooms and provide, in a proactive manner, provide our second step, our social emotional learning curriculum, provide groups, and support our classroom teachers in that tier. You ask about tier 2 intervention for our behavioral and social emotional needs. Social workers can act as a consultant to teachers to help provide those supports within the classroom. Our ELL services, as you know, Ms. Alice Smith has done just a phenomenal job of ensuring that our buildings are staffed and our students that are English language learners get the support that they need. Psychologists. So we're fortunate to have 4 full-time psychologists across the district, and psychologists are really not just individuals who do assessments and write reports and develop goals and objectives for IEPs. Our psychologists are highly trained individuals who can help provide intervention ideas. They sit at our student support team meetings. They can do classroom observations. They can interpret data. So they are just an invaluable resource for us in our multidisciplinary team. We have instructional coaches, as you know, and those instructional coaches are really there to support Tier 1 instruction. Speech and language services. So speech and language, although those individuals are servicing students with IEPs, they're also a critical part of our multidisciplinary team. So when we're looking at students who may not make progress academically, one of the reasons that students may not be making progress is because they have a processing concern or issue. And our speech and language staff are there at the table to help us with interventions, but also to help us identify if we need to move a student on to evaluation under special education.
So as we look at that screen and you look at our 5 elementary schools, Trustee Stevenson, when we had that conversation here a number of years ago, we had 0.8 psychologists in the district, for the whole district. We have 4 now. Social work, we did not have full-time social workers in each of our elementary schools. We do now. We did not have math intervention occurring in 3 of our elementaries. We do now. If you take a look at serving our students who are English language learners, we have 2.5 teachers at Parkview Elementary, which is our elementary that has our highest amount of need. Again, think about equity and think about fairness. It's about equity. But looking at this as a physical manifestation of the commitment this district has made to its kids, and we put our money closest to where our kids get those services. So now the secondary part.
So looking at 512, again, we have math intervention. We did not have full-time math intervention at Meadows last year. I had to pull that service to the elementary building because we had need in our elementary, and that need was not being met. And it goes back to meeting kids the earliest as we can. So when we identify students in first and second grade that are struggling, we wanted to provide that support. So thanks to you for allowing us to hire additional math intervention so that we could have that service across the district. ELA intervention, again, we are fortunate to have fantastic individuals, Meadows Middle School and High School. And not only are they providing services in the area of reading, in consulting and writing, but they also are supporting teachers outside of those content areas. So we know that students have difficulty in other courses with comprehension and some of the difficulty with texts that are there. So those interventionists can provide supports and ideas for those teachers so students can better access the instruction in those courses as well. A social worker, and we have 2 full-time social workers at our high school. But if you look down, we also have now a student support specialist. That's a social work certification, but that individual is working with gen ed students. We have, our work around mental health and well-being at our high school. There's definitely a need to support students in that. So Ms. Katrina Lorenz is starting that role this year as our student support specialist.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
So is it the hope, like my understanding is that there was some resistance around some of the referrals. And I would say resistance maybe from parents thinking like, right, my kid doesn't need a social worker because, let's face it, I mean, I'm a social worker, so I can say this. You all can't, probably. But, there's a little bit of a stigma around it. And, for some kids, there was a little bit of pushback, I think, from certain people saying, so do we think this is a way that maybe those kids will feel a little freer to seek out the support that maybe that's been recommended to them? Because my understanding is that parents have to sign
Right.
for the services.
Need to sign consent for services.
Right, which makes sense. But is it our hope that kind of by making it clear what that person's doing, because a student support specialist sounds very different. Like that sounds
right.
More positive.
Right. And also the idea is for that role to help raise awareness,
right.
to help support classroom teachers, to be outreach to parents, to have a more proactive approach to mental health and well-being. So, it's not just responding to the crisis that comes in. It's trying to identify and help students understand coping skills and some of those triggers that might occur for students before they get to the point where they're in a crisis situation.
Okay.
And really working in conjunction with taking the stigma away from that. Last year we had 23 separate events around mental health and well-being for our community, from kids to coaches to parents, some of those ongoing. So really the hope is that we can destigmify that to say if a student needs assistance, no matter the name of the person helping them, it's a good thing.
Right.
They're in good hands. And so working in conjunction with the student support specialist as well as our district strategy from a K-12 approach. Impact last week, every staff member went through a 2-hour capacity building session on well-being for themselves. And the reason we chose that on-ramp is if we can see it as adults, then hopefully we can also communicate why it's important to our kids.
Right. Fantastic. Great,
I have
thank
a
you.
question regarding the high school math intervention and ELL intervention. Is that a class? And if so, does it count as a high school credit for the students?
Great question. So our model at the high school for intervention is a push-in model. So prior to 2 years ago, we had what we called a lab. And it was math lab or ELA lab, and kids were scheduled in that lab. It was a credit, and what we found is that students weren't really getting the support that they needed in the way that they needed it, because there's a loss of opportunity. They lose a credit, and they're not getting the real-time help in the classroom. So our math interventionists, they push into classrooms, and it looks very similar to a co-teacher, where they provide support within the classroom. And then if a teacher is providing instruction and there's time for the students to work together or work independently, the interventionist can pull a group of students out and do reteaching, give some guided feedback, and really provide support in a different way than we were able to in the past. And our struggling learners are at the high school level are up against a graduation clock, and so sometimes they have already lost credit, and then by taking a class of intervention class where they're scheduled, where only a few kids can get that support because of maybe just one teacher. We have 2 individuals that can go into classrooms and provide that. And also, they can impact Tier 1 instruction because they're supporting the classroom teacher in those good instructional practices for our striving learners. So universal design for learning and accommodations that can help the students access the instruction in a different way.
And we've shared with the board the past 2 years, the metrics of success are phenomenal. When you look at the students who participate in that intervention at the high school, the amount of students in the D, E, and I list have fallen dramatically for students receiving that intervention. And this is kind of a cool thing in my mind that push-in model was really the impetus, and a couple other things we'll show you, for going to more of also that push-in model at the elementary in the rest of our system. So it was an example of the high school, Ms. Hoppenstedt taking a risk of doing something that was different, that risk really paying off in a way that's proven super beneficial for our kids.
How much has it changed?
What
Percentage-wise,
changed?
How much has it changed from when you didn't do it and you had the lab?
Right now,
As
Dr.
opposed-
Matthews, I know you shared with the board.
Last year, reported to the board that I think over, I forget the exact percentage, but it was well over 70% of our students earned all their credits.
It was 80.
I think it was
80% of our students earn their credits, moving from freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior. And previously, we had less than 50% of our students earning those all their credits each year.
And really at the high school level, it's not about going back and trying to fill in all of the gaps that may have occurred over the years. It's about helping the students be able to access the curriculum and the instruction in a way that they can learn what they need to learn and pass that class to get high school credit. So our, yep.
So now that you have this data, are the high school teachers buying into this push-in system?
Yes.
The general population of high school teachers,
Well, you said the data has gone from 50 to 80 in terms of with this new
Yeah.
push-in model, as opposed to
Yes.
just sticking the kids in a lab and
Yes.
not getting anything.
Teachers are very receptive
Yeah.
to these teachers as they go through their day. These teachers kind of teach half the day and then are interventionists for half the day. And their work is very well received by the teachers at the high school. The goal is to continue that and perhaps expand, as we see here, it's ELA and math, but there's needs also in science, for example. And so the question is, how do we maximize the benefit of this kind of approach?
Did you have another question, Mrs. Stevenson?
So the ELA intervention only goes into the ELA classes and not because ELA is just not just writing, it's also the reading.
Mm-hmm.
So what about those social studies classes and those science classes?
And
I'm
that
just thinking about those ninth graders that are coming in, not even just from our middle school, but from other districts, and they're not caught up.
Right.
So I kind of beg to differ with you when you were saying that, yes, we want them to get that class and that credit, but also if they're coming from a different district that is nowhere near compared to ours, they're set up for failure when they come in the door.
and that's really that tension that we have, though, right? Is the finite need, the finite aspects of resources of time and money. Is you may advocate for something like that. We may have another person advocate for additional administrators or additional teachers. And as such, our job really in the Office of Academics, in my mind, and then through Dr. Matthews and through this board, is to make recommendations to look at that K-12 system. In a perfect world, we would love to be able to allocate enough resources to have science and social studies intervention. That would be fantastic. Right now, when we look at this model and we see how robust it is, that's a conversation, quite frankly, and I'm going to look at all of you, that you would have to have. What is your threshold for asset allocation, and where is that? I believe that our team has come up with an asset allocation that is proving to meet the needs of our kids and hitting those results. If you were to say to us, okay, we'll give you somebody for social studies and science, I'm not going to argue with you for a second. However, I also know that we have a responsibility to our community to stay financially solvent and to make sure that we're above goal number 3.
And I would say that for our literacy support at the high school, it does go into other content areas. Our 3 individuals, Lauren Neisel, Hattie McGuire, and Mike Ziegler, they do meet with students, and they do look at schedules and see where they can get students. If they can't directly provide support, then they work with teachers in the department meeting to help them with, this is some Tier 1 and Tier 2 accommodations and or interventions that you can do for struggling learners. And the teachers really are great at sharing. They have access to Atlas. Our intervention team knows what each content area is doing. And so if there is a big writing project coming up in social studies, kids can come and get that support from those individuals.
And really, that's a good time to talk about Laura Neisel, who you'll see on there, and Ms. Hoppenstedt can clearly speak to her student support coach duties, but she has also led something called the Wildcat Writing Den, which is new this year, came before the board, an approved class by the University of Michigan for credit, for an ELA credit for the kids in there, but we have kids in there who will be teaching other kids' peers how to write well. So when we're talking about, let's say I have a science report coming up, that's a place I can drop into and get help in my writing from up here. Let's say I have a social studies paper coming up. That's another area of support beyond what Ms. Neisel provides as a student support coach.
And I don't want to neglect to highlight our counselors that we have 5th through 12th grade. And those individuals wear many hats, but we're fortunate to have 2 full-time counselors at Meadows, 2 full-time counselors at the middle school, and then our 5 counselors at the high school. Psychologists, again, we have psychologists, they share time. Mr. Cook, you have a question?
Yeah, going back to our interventionists.
Mm-hmm.
We think we're a high achieving district, and data shows that. Is there a higher percentage of kids new to the district that are needing our interventionists than the percentage of kids that need from our district, that have come through our district? Or is it pretty evenly?
Historically, what we've found is that students who've gone through Novi need the service as much as the students who come in from outside.
Just as much as the students from outside.
It was a data set that we did about 3 years ago, Trustee Cook, that bore out exactly what Dr. Matthews is saying. We looked at kids who came in at different junctures and kids who had been with us since kindergarten, and what we saw was really a similar amount of need.
Okay. Thank you.
Instructional coaches, again, in each of those buildings, speech and language support, and we talked about our student support specialist, Ms. Katrina Lorenz. Any questions about our 512 intervention staff?
Just one quick question, because I know we hired a new counselor this year to handle the 504s. Is that?
Great question. So that's actually our student support specialist.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Ms. Andrea Tobis was in the role of counselor and also 504 building coordinator, and you heard that our numbers have grown significantly. Ms. Lorenz is well-suited and set up to be our lead with 504s at our high school.
And what was reported up to us from the counseling department is that Ms. Tobis was taking 75 to 80% of her time in 504s. So really, if you look at that, that's a net pickup of a 0.8 FTE in counseling at the high school with the addition of Ms. Lorenz, who's very comfortable with that.
So did it reduce the numbers of, I'm assuming it reduced the caseloads of the other students?
The other counselors.
The other counselors, so they have less students on their caseload.
And Principal Carter would be able to answer
she's
that.
picked
But
them up. Because I know we're high, we're off base. I don't know what the right word is.
We're above the recommendation.
Yes.
When you look at the county, we're kind of within the county range.
Right.
But so what that means is throughout the county, we're above the recommendation.
Right. But she has helped that situation, I
Yes,
guess
she
is all I'm
has.
saying, so that we can see the impact of that. Okay.
And I don't want to move on without mentioning that the individuals, the names that you see on these sheets, it really, if you knew them as individuals, as professionals, they are an incredible group of a team of specialists. They're highly trained, they're passionate, they come to work excited every day to work with our most challenging students, but they believe in the growth mindset that these students can and will learn with the right supports. They understand the importance of relationships and how that's the foundation of getting kids to that next level, and then the engagement. And so I am so proud, and if you see any of these individuals in action, it's quite amazing what they do for our students. So we talked a little bit about change over the years. I am proud of where we're at now, and we've come a long way in the last 3 years. We had pockets of programs and interventions across buildings, but we really didn't have consistency and alignment. We now have level literacy intervention, which is our intervention program, K-8. We have our Advantage Math Recovery. Our math interventionists are being trained in the use of this, and that is consistent. We had sort of different things going on in the buildings, not to say bad things, just not consistent. And so we wanted to ensure that we had a true continuum of consistency for each of those intervention areas. Social emotional learning curriculum, I've already mentioned second step, but that's something that we did not have prior to a few years ago. We've shifted the model, not full push-in intervention support, but we recognize that kids were taken out of the classroom to provide to get that intervention, but that support wasn't transferring back into the classroom as we would hope, and that we know that we need to ensure that the skills and the accommodations that students are receiving in intervention that are working for students also transfer into Tier 1, and we can help support our classroom teachers in how to work with our struggling learners in a different way. We have a problem-solving process, a common problem-solving process. We call it SST, Student Support Team meetings, where we have a full multidisciplinary team that comes together to look at data, to make informed decisions, to develop intervention plans, and that's fantastic for us to do that on an ongoing basis for our students. We have, as I mentioned a little bit before, common forms and documentation. If you're a parent and your child is receiving an intervention or some type of support, you want to ensure that information follows your child so that history is there for the next teacher or the next building or the next level. And through our common forms and documentation, that follows students in their CA-60 file. We have a district PBIS committee, and that's really to ensure that we have common practices across the K-6 and eventually K-12 for our positive behavior interventions and supports. We have a new diagnostic tool as of last year. This helps us really dig into identifying skills that in grade level equivalents for students that are struggling, and it kind of digs deeper than what we get from using the NWA. And iReady also provides a progress monitoring tool, so we can do quick checks on kids that on the identified skills that they need to see how are they progressing with the intervention on those skills. And I also mentioned the DESA, which is our social emotional learning screener. And this year we're going to roll that out just starting at kindergarten level to get a good baseline of where our students are, and then grow that through our other levels.
So this list really represents the technical part of the change leading to the adaptive change. The adaptive, again, is rather than asking what's wrong with the kid, we start looking at ourselves and saying what can we do to better serve that child. The list that you see here are a list of technical things that we've implemented over the years, and especially the past 3. And really, so much of this has come down to a program evaluation, district improvement plan, and an advanced ed review. So in the 16-17 and 17-18 academic years, we contracted with Oakland Schools to look at our intervention programming 2 years ago, and last year our Tier 1 instruction. They delivered substantive reports, meeting with, 25 or so stakeholders or more in both of those, really helping us to hone in on what could we do better. We also had an advanced ed review, which the board's aware of, that came in last spring. 5 people that were in our district for 3.5 days, talked to folks, analyzed things, gave us their feedback. What that really led to then was a data-focused approach to professional learning and instructional improvement. We had 3 meetings with our building administrators, central office, that focused on those reports and really what are the things that we're doing that we need to do, and what are those things are we doing that are we just choosing to do but might be taking up space and time from the core things that we should do to deliver results for our children. So that led to that powerful reflection which we had, which led to the robust discussion, And then that determined our action, our district improvement plan. So our district school improvement plan is very focused, focusing on writing and science, as well as social emotional learning, and finally MTSS in the K-6 element. What all of this does in the district improvement plan is it helps to anchor us. It makes visible a shared responsibility, eliminates initiative fatigue. So rather than having 16 things that we're doing, trying to hone in on a few and do it well, the building school improvement plan is aligned to the district improvement plan, and it's all about alignment, communication, and collaboration to help our kids. Special education continuum, again, we offer a program of service options designed to meet the individual needs of eligible students with disabilities from birth through age 26. This continuum of services will require board presentation, in my opinion. It is substantial, impressive, and something that we can really, really be proud of as a district. Students who have IEPs are served incredibly well in our community school district. I believe our total spend on a student with an IEP is about $88,000, Ms. Minnick, per student. One of the highest numbers, I believe, in the entire county. And that's something, quite frankly, as a public educator, I am exceptionally proud of, and we should be as a community. It's about equity. Certain students need more. They deserve more. They get more if they're in Novi. And the shared responsibility really...
Mr. O'Connor had a question.
Yeah.
On the special ed, you said the initial goal of all that we're doing with these early interventions is to reduce those IEPs, reduce special ed. Has the number going up or down?
Down.
It's down.
It
We're
is
down
down.
about 100 IEPs in the district over the last few years. Now, we picked some students up under 504, but other students, they're being well served just with our general education interventions.
And that feels really great. On a shared response...
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Minnick.
What was that cost you said per student?
Ms. Minnick? About...
It's about $88,000. I can
Per
provide
student?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's something I would say that, again, that we're exceptionally proud of. The continuum that we have is one, frankly, I'll say 9 years ago, coming in and seeing students that were put in the worst rooms in the district, I would say hidden away, not in classrooms with, every student is a general education student first. If Ms. Shaylee Patel was here, she'd be screaming it. Every student is a general education student first, meaning the least restrictive environment for every child. Not every district does that. We didn't do it. We do it now. Case in point, a student with significant needs today, as I was walking through the Deerfield cafeteria, enjoying lunch on his birthday. They're sitting with students, even though the student requires a significant amount of need, with a group of young men who were also having lunch with him together, celebrating his birthday. And I get a little emotional about that because that is what we should be about. That each one of our children deserve that kind of experience. So on the next slide, which is shared responsibility, what we have here is really, it's about all of us, and you're on here. Board of Education is on here. We are on here. Classroom teachers, reading support specialists, math support specialists, social workers, counselors, student support specialists, ESL teachers, instructional coaches, psychologists, ancillary staff.
Our parents and guardians, our building administrators, our central office, and of course, as our Dr. Weber mentioned, the Board of Education. We all have a responsibility in MTSS, and it doesn't fall on just the classroom teachers or just the interventionists, but we all have a part in ensuring that we are providing students what they need.
Great. Questions? Additional questions from the board? Mr. O'Connor?
I get a little nervous when I see a slide that says shared responsibility. I see this a lot in the private sector, and it's scary because it's like if you have two starting quarterbacks, then the team doesn't have a quarterback at all. I'm more interested in, especially with the additional support that we've given to the district, that everyone understands their role and that they're accountable. Certainly there's shared responsibility, but I hope that this group, especially on the left side of the slide, understands their roles as they're working together and integrating together to make sure that our students are growing.
Absolutely. That slide, really, the importance of that slide is if somebody looks at MTSS as a program or a thing, that's a huge danger in MTSS system, is that people will look at a person to be the person for everything. What really MTSS is a true enactment of our strategic plan and our monument. It is, if you will, the glue that brings all of those pieces together, behaviorally, academically, and so on. So really that slide there is to delineate and clarify that we all have that. It's not just a school board or a principal or an MTSS coordinator or an interventionist.
And I can share that last week during our impact session that I spent an hour and 15 minutes with all those individuals on the left-hand side, and we went over our roles and responsibilities within our MTSS framework. And while I can't, there's not accountability on my part for all of those individuals, building principals understand the accountability, and so we've been through conversations, and we've grown as a team. So this isn't just a one and done type of work. I mean, we have to continue to do this and to continue to evaluate and get better. But it is about bringing those individuals together, and every person knows their role.
Other questions from the board, Mr. Cook?
You mentioned it just there. We can get better. What challenges or roadblocks do we have to make this even better? And what can we as a board do to help out in making this even better?
Well, I think that what you have done so far, we're incredibly grateful for, and it's just having the full team to support students. I mean, that's the biggest piece there. What we need to do is continue to support our teachers in providing Tier 2 intervention for students that are struggling academic and behaviorally, and that's a big part of where our literacy interventionists, our math interventionists, and our instructional coaches support that, and through PD opportunities or professional learning opportunities that we can help teachers with the strategies and the interventions that really work with students that are struggling that they can provide in the classroom. So that's one key area that we know that we need to focus on.
I would say that there are times where I feel we lack a sense of urgency to help the kids that really need that help. If there is a school district in the state of Michigan, and I would argue in the country, that has an opportunity to shrink the opportunity and achievement gaps to there, it's ours. And it really, to me, it comes down to will. We have the pieces, we have the people. Do we have the will to do the things that we need to do as a school board, a community, parents, staff members, to do everything we possibly can to provide those opportunities for our kids?
I would also add continuing to have the low class size really helps the classroom teacher in being able to provide the Tier 2 interventions because you may have 3 or 4 students that are in need, and when you have a smaller class size, you're better able to differentiate, you're better able to provide universal design, and you're better able to pull those students during times of the day where no new instruction is happening, and can do reteaching and provide the best practice at that time for those struggling learners. So low class sizes help.
And are there any groups of students that we may be missing with this that may need intervention just to be engaged, and maybe not they're performing academically, but because of not being engaged they're causing behavioral issues, and how are we addressing those kids?
Mm-hmm. So we address those through the behavior side of the framework, where we're looking at, we may have high achieving students, but there's low performance, and so we're looking at well what is happening in the environment that we may need to change to help engage the student. Is it a relationship piece? Is it something that's happening outside of the home or outside of the school that we can help work with families to address. So we kind of look at students individually and decide what is it that they need.
And the board's also provided additional coaching support around our students who are at the top end of the threshold. Students that may be struggling in class because of a lack of differentiation and a lack of appropriate challenge. So that's another piece that we're moving into.
Where does that fit in this then?
What's that?
Does that fit in with
It was in the
MTS?
coaching part. Yep. So when you saw the instructional coaches, the additional coach that the board granted us the coaching office is now approaching that differentiation piece and really also looking at how do we help our teachers who have those students who are really at that top end and might be bored, for lack of a better term. How do we challenge them?
Okay, Mr. Khan?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing tonight, if I may translate, is from a resource perspective, you're certainly comfortable in terms of what we've been able to give you in terms of the intervention. But really, what I'm hearing tonight is, you know, having the vision is no solution. Everything depends upon execution. And that's really where our focus is now.
Right
that we
on.
begin to execute accordingly.
Absolutely.
Now that we've got the resources in place.
It's been a process of building up these resources over, this is my 8th year in the district, Dr. Weber's 9th year in the district, and so we really have, we believe, put in place a system that we just need to execute on to make sure that it's having the impact that we believe it can and should have with our students.
Well, I mean, and I have to say, I do like the adjustments that you've made, finding out that, the lab class really maybe wasn't the most effective method and not belaboring that. And because I think in the past, maybe that would have been something that just kind of we get stuck at.
Right. And I would say that true intervention doesn't stop and start based on the semester.
Right.
And that's really what was happening. When we identify a student for support, it needs to be ongoing until the student no longer demonstrates the need. And through a push-in support at our upper levels, we're able to provide that year-long if needed. And it doesn't simply stop and start, based on that hour or that semester.
Right.
Well,
Right.
President Murphy, thanks for noting that. The one thing that I'm proud of our team is that making a decision and changing a course of action is not something that we have a hard time with. Because at the end, it's really simple. Our why, can we go back to that why slide? Our why slide, or our why we do this, is incredibly, ratio, all right? Is it, each child we serve deserves every opportunity to find real success and a sense of belonging in our community public school district. Like, we all get to get up and that's our why.
Yeah.
Right? This is what we do. And as Dennis said, like, execution, will, we have the resources, we have the kids, our families are amazing, our kids are amazing. Like, go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we look forward to the report next year. Mr. Smith, excuse me.
Real quick question. At Meadows, with Jessie specifically, does she work with the 5th grade students and then switch to the 6th grade building like they do with the principals?
Yes, correct. So
Okay.
Ms.
But
Harrison
that's unique to the Meadows building.
Right. Ms. Harrison is one of our counselors, and our counselors and administrators in that building loop with kids.
Okay.
And because of the layout of Meadows, they physically move their office
Right.
each year, and that's just, they are able to build those relationships with students and families and move on and to the next year.
Well, that worked really good with my son. And then just as an FYI, he's new in a building in 7th grade now, and he had some anxiety. And Amy is assigned his counselor, and she went out of her. There was a lot going on last week with Impact 18 and all that.
Oh, yeah.
But she came in and worked with, my Amy to agree to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning just so she could have some time with Thomas, and it was just very appreciative. She didn't have to do that, obviously.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Are there anything else from the board? We do thank you for the very thorough presentation, and certainly
You're welcome.
talking about student achievement and how we're going to help, those students that are struggling with that achievement piece is, this is something I love, hearing about it and talking about it, and certainly appreciate the time that you took to be here and to explain it so thoroughly to us. So I would encourage the board, if anybody does have additional questions that creep up after this, reach out
Please reach out.
to Mrs. Hoppenstadt or Dr. Weber.
Okay.
And
I do think it's important for the board to take a moment and to appreciate the work that you did to support the staffing of these positions, because it really is making a tremendous impact in the lives of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are to our consent items. I would entertain a motion. We have 2 consent items, regular meeting minutes and work session minutes. Mr. Cook,
I move to approve the consent items as presented.
is there support?
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. These don't necessarily need any additional discussion, so I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have our action items. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Our first action item this evening is personnel recommendations, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Tonight, I am pleased to recommend 5 new hires as well as 2 resignations. First, the new hires: Megan Hughes, adult education teacher; Michelle Rudy, preschool teacher; Kyoko Johnson, ESL parapro; Sandra Timmer, adult education secretary; and Christopher Jordan, an HVAC technician. And the 2 resignations are Kristen Smith, preschool teacher, and Douglas Thaxton, a bus driver.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Novi Community School Board of Education adopts the personnel recommendations as presented.
All right.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson and supported by Mr. Cook. Are there any questions or comments about the personnel report? Glad to see we have an HVAC person so quickly.
Still looking for another one.
Okay, well, last time it took us quite a while to even find one, so that's good news. Other questions or comments? In terms of the resignations, these are not teachers. They're not in high administrative positions, so they don't necessarily impact the budget in any way, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we're still doing okay for bus drivers? Yeah? Was that your question? Sorry, didn't mean to beat you to the punch there. All right, well, I will call the question. All those in favor of accepting the personnel recommendation as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next item is journalism media field trip. Dr. Matthews.
We presented this to the board at our last meeting. Ms. Cadena and Ms. Mercer, teachers at Novi High School, are requesting that the Novi journalism and news media students attend the Journalism Education Association conference in Chicago. We'll travel by Amtrak train and we'll attend the convention workshops each day, attending customized sessions in writing, photography, design, broadcast video, packaging, interviewing, and more. Tentative cost is approximately $500 per student, and that includes lodging, transportation, convention fees, and food. Students will leave Ann Arbor on the Amtrak train and arrive in Chicago Union Station. They will stay at the Hyatt Regency and miss 2 days of school. This came before the board for information and discussion, as I said, at the regular meeting of August 22nd, and it comes to the board tonight for approval.
All right. I would like to, yes, Mr.
I'll move that the Novi Community School Board of Education approve the Novi Journalism News Media Field Trip to Chicago on November 1st through 3rd of this year.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. O'Connor and supported by Mr. Cook. I will ask if there's any additional questions, because I know several of you weren't here last time. Okay, fantastic. Well, then I will call the question. All those in favor of approving the field trip as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. It is 8:08. Can we take just a brief? No?
Yes.
You're the president.
Well, I would suggest maybe we take a brief break and reconvene at 8:15, because I think the next couple items might be a little bit of, not the first one, maybe the second one might be a little bit of discussion. No break? Oh,
No, we can take a break.
okay, thank you. So we will take a brief break and we'll be back at 8:15. Okay, good evening. Welcome back to the September 6th meeting of the Board of Education. We are to the point in our agenda this evening for information and discussion. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The first is the MASB certification of delegates. The Michigan Association of School Boards 2018 Delegate Assembly will begin Thursday, November 1st, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. at the Amway Grand Plaza in Grand Rapids. Delegates selected by boards of education across the state will decide MASB's positions on a wide variety of issues affecting education. All delegates and alternates must be school board members. Only delegates and alternates named by your board may offer motions and vote on issues. However, all school board members may speak on the issues and participate in the debate. Your 2018-19 MASB dues must be paid in order for you to participate, which they have been, so that's not an issue. All delegates must be certified by Friday, October 5th. A link to certify the official voting delegates and alternates who will represent your Board of Education has been sent to the Superintendent's Secretary. The naming of delegates and alternates by their respective boards is presented tonight for discussion and will come back at the regular meeting of the board on September 27th so that we can identify those and get those names to MASB.
Okay, so discussion about this. Are there board members that are attending the MASB? You're attending, Mr. O'Connor? And you'll be there Thursday evening?
Mm-hmm.
I know that is also a board meeting evening as well. Are there other board members that are planning on attending the, it's right before the
Election.
No, it's before the leadership, MASB's annual leadership conference.
Correct.
So it's the Thursday before that. So if anybody else is planning on attending, if you do decide that you're going to go out and attend some classes that weekend and you wouldn't mind being an alternative for Thursday evening, if Mr. O'Connor is comfortable being our delegate that evening, but it would be nice to maybe have an alternative if somebody's planning on going out, and then if they're not needed, going out on Friday or Saturday. So just get word back either to Sheila or to myself, letting us know of your intention to maybe travel out that way for that weekend. And there is still time to register for that. So if there's no additional discussion? Yes, Mr.
Is that a board meeting night?
The September 27th? Yes, that's
No,
right.
I'm talking about November 1st, I believe, are we talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any
Well,
additional?
depending on what's on the agenda, I'll be in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Just want to clarify that.
Okay. Next, if there's no additional discussion about the certification of delegates, is the superintendent, this will come back for a vote with to fill in the names at our September 27th meeting.
Correct.
Next is our superintendent and district goals. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. We've had a chance as a board in 2 work sessions to talk about the superintendent goals, which are a required piece of the superintendent evaluation. We have, as I said, had 2 discussions and multiple opportunities to kind of review these. These are presented tonight as kind of the 3rd draft of these goals. They fall under the 4 district goals, and so the first district goal is that the Novi Community School District will ensure that all students achieve and grow at a high level while reducing the achievement gap. And we created 3 kind of categories under this goal. The first is an achievement, and we're looking at first math proficiency as measured by the NWEA will increase 2% over the 2018 proficiency level. So this is a goal on achievement. And then, so the first 2 are on math. The first one is that we will increase the number who are proficient, and the second is that we will reduce the number who are in the lowest 2 quintiles. And so we're increasing the number of proficient, decreasing the number of students who are in the low average and low ranges.
Mr. O'Connor.
So on goal number 2, could you just explain that a little bit, because you've added the last 3 years in terms of what the lowest 2 quintiles were. So
correct.
How does that fit into the measurement? I just want some clarification.
The board asked for some of the information, or the data at least, of what the lowest 2 quintiles have been in the last 2 years. And so those, you can divide the group into basically ranges of 20%. The lowest 2 quintiles are the 0 to 20% and the 21 to 40% range. And so the last 3 years, the data is provided there. And so what this goal states is that we will reduce the percentage of students in the lowest 2 quintiles will be reduced, and then it identifies kind of ranges there for highly effective, effective, minimally, and ineffective that you would judge the success of that.
So our baseline then with this measurement would be 14% if I'm reading this correct? Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then same with number, not to move ahead, but it's the same
with 3 and
concept
4.
with 3 and
Yep.
4, yeah.
So
Okay.
3 and 4 reading proficiency.
So our baseline
Same,
could-
same
baseline
verbiage
will
as
be
the
20.
earlier ones.
Yep, same idea on 3 and 4, except they focus on reading, the NWA reading proficiency. So the reading proficiency, we will increase proficiency over the 2017-18 level, and then we will reduce the number of students in the lowest 2 quintiles as well, are the 2 goals there in achievement.
Okay.
So the baseline there would be 20%.
Correct. And one might ask why the baseline is higher in reading. That would be probably a direct reflection of the increasing ESL population that we have in our district. And so that's why we, for example, have worked to add those additional ESL teachers in the district, additional support. One at Parkview, one at the high school, so that we believe that those will have an impact on some of those schools.
All right. Any questions about those initial achievement goals, except for Dr. Matthews? No? Okay, then we will move on. The growth goal there, I had Dr. Matthews leave that on the page. I know that some of you weren't able to be at that last meeting that we talked about it.
We had a discussion at the last meeting about MSTEP, and the consensus of the members that were here at the last meeting was that we would remove the growth goal for MSTEP because we didn't feel it was as meaningful a goal as some of these other goals that we have identified. They give us a growth kind of outcome on MSTEP, but we get the data late. It's really not actionable, and so we believe that we have other measurements that are more actionable through the NWEA. So the goal on growth here, using the NWA School Conditional Growth Index. The Conditional Growth Index is a measure that enables a comparison of growth between grades or groups by putting them all on an equal scale. Measurement ranks your grade level growth among the growth observed across all matching schools within the NWA norms. And so students are matched to students in their growth. They identify what the growth should be, and then a value of 0 corresponds to the typical growth of students in that range, and indicates that the growth exactly matched projections. It was asked last time what the kind of the limits are of this conditional growth index, and the conditional growth index is based on the bell-shaped curve, so there's really not an end to it. In theory, it goes on ad infinitum, but really it's a range of kind of +3 to -3. Is the typical range. +1 on each side of the 0 would represent kind of 68% of the students tested. A +2 on each side would represent that you would be equal to or higher than 95% of the students tested, and a +3 would be that you would be equal to or higher than 99% of the students tested.
It kind of sounds like it's related to the standard deviation of the scores.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. O'Connor?
So for the board members that weren't here, these growth indexes, these next 3 goals really tied to the impact training that the teachers went to this past week in terms of learning how to take that NWEA data and make it actionable. And by looking at that data, especially since there's a historical perspective, now hopefully, the index will move up, move accordingly. So this is tying growth right to what we're asking our staff.
This is under goal 1, which is that our students will achieve at a high level and will reduce the achievement gap. And so this really focuses on that growth component. Dr. Weber, I didn't know if you had any additional comments on that.
Just clarification, the index scores, we had spring of 18, now it looks like it's spring of 17. So I just want to make sure that we've got the right chart.
I double checked and
no problem. I just want to make sure we've got this is the right one.
Yes.
Okay.
I had mislabeled it when we had our conversation earlier, so this is the data is correct.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Okay. Mr.
Yeah, no, that was, I
That was your
was
clar-
wondering why the difference in the data. Both
Yeah.
mine say spring of 18. Both my copies say spring of 18, but.
I gave you 3 years of data, spring of 18, spring of 17, spring of 16 data.
Okay. Yeah, but the spring of 18 data compared to what you've given us in the year,
Previously
Yeah,
is
it was-
incorrect.
that was spring of 17.
Okay,
Correct.
so the one that's in our board book now is the one that's accurate.
Correct.
rather
Well,
than
it's
the-
got all three.
Right. The previously I'd given you, I labeled it spring of 18, but it was really spring of 17.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're working on the same
Yeah.
numbers. It's all good, all good.
And so the goals become that the focus on the conditional growth index and measurements of focused on math and in reading. I need to relabel one of the charts there. The second chart, number 3, should be reading and not math, but that math on there should be-
Oh, that should say, oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay. Okay. So
And then
this is going to come back to us, though, to
Yes,
vote on at
yep,
the next
yep.
meeting. So
This
we can
is,
make that.
this is for information and discussion.
Okay.
And then the third part of that goal 1 is really using is focusing on achievement gap. And it really kind of revised it a little bit, using a 3-year average for K-6 students identified for reading support will show accelerated growth. Accelerated growth is a pattern of growth that moves a student closer to grade level. This gets at what Mr. Cook was kind of talking about, how the students who needs additional support, those students who would be our gap students, not only do they need to make a year's growth, they need to make a year's plus growth if they're going to catch up. And so these goals try to capture that idea that the students who have been identified for reading support and or math support will show accelerated growth. And accelerated growth is that they would have made more than 1 year's growth over the course of that 3-year period.
All right. Questions, Mr.
I
O'Connor?
noticed with this one, you lowered the highly effective from 90% to 85%. Is there rationale for that?
Probably not a good rationale, but I was trying to, since this is the first year we've had this, I didn't know what the appropriate cutoff point would be, and so I did change that from 90% to 85%, believing that if we can demonstrate that 85% of our students have made accelerated growth over that 3-year period of the students who need it, that would be considered highly effective. But clearly, that's a board.
Yeah,
Well,
what
let me
do board
ask-
members think about that?
Let me ask a quick question, because I think this kind of ties into our MTSS that we just had a presentation on tonight. Because to your point, Mr. O'Connor, is that we've just put everything in place, so now it's execution, right? So obviously, we'd love to see it be at 90%. I think everybody would, but I think given that this is the first comprehensive year of having this team in place, is the board comfortable with setting the percentage at 85% in the hopes that we would then be able to drive that up?
Well, I guess my question becomes, okay, you're saying you use 3 years worth of data. Do we already have 2 years worth of data? Or do we have 3 years worth of data now?
No, I don't believe we have 3 years of data now. I think that we could look back and find, we have last year's data, and I'm confident that we have the year before's data, based on the kind of the goals that we've established the last 2 years. And so this year would be the 3rd year of data. This 18-19 would constitute our 3rd year of data. And so your question is well formulated. As we look back for those other 2 years, what's the number? And I can work with Mr. Dinkelman and Dr. Weber to try to identify what that number would be, and that may change that number. We may find that 95% of our students have made accelerated growth, or we might find that only 60% of our students have made accelerated growth. So I'll work on that number before we finalize.
I'd like to see the history of it and where we are now before we say, okay, 85%. Because if we're only at 30%,
correct.
It's
That'd
not
be
doing you justice.
That'd be setting somebody up for failure.
Right.
Or failure.
Mr. O'Connor?
In no way am I trying to be unfair about this. I just want to make sure that it's a realistic number. I mean, we heard in the presentation, and it's on tape of Dr. Weber saying like this in terms of academic gap, right? Because of all the resources. So I just want to be fair about this, because this goes back to a philosophical discussion that we've had as a board, and I know we don't all agree, but, you know, what is a 3 and what is a 4? And is a 4 just achieving that 85% when we're hearing that, you know, the tier one instruction, it's 80, is it 80% to 90%, or what is it? So
Yeah.
I just think we need to clarify that number, and I personally just think that a 4 should be more of a stretch goal. That's my philosophy. But
And as I was just referenced in that, when we talk about shrinking those pieces down, also in the board meeting, when we were talking about our goals, talking about the time it will take to do that and to get there. You know, we're really proud of the achievement that we have across the county, tops of the past 3 years in science and social studies and in math, I think number 3 in ELA. But it's really that bottom strata of students that Ms. Hoppenstedt and I just presented on. But as Ms. Murphy said, it's going to take some time. And
I think that's fair commentary. I mean, we're bringing in more resources. So how long is it going to take that integration?
Right.
That's definitely a fair argument. I just want to make sure we're not just, you know, here's the number.
Right.
You know?
I am really hesitant to go towards yearly data goals on this piece, because then you start chasing the quarter, or you're starting to chase the short-term piece. The commitment that the board has made to resource allocation, and now in connection to what I think you said, Trustee O'Connor, it's about doing it, right? It's about getting after it and getting there. But if we put a goal in place that is a yearly piece, I think it'll put pressure on those areas that's really undue. And that's for the board to determine what is a reasonable amount of time. I would argue very plainly that a year is very myopic, that we need to look at this in the span of a 3-year data set to see really what's going on.
And we don't want to create a situation where teachers look for shortcuts to achieve a goal.
Atlanta, Georgia would show us as an
which has
example of
happened
that.
in other districts around the country.
But our premise is a 3-year average, is it
Right.
not? I mean,
Yep.
So
That's why we put that 3-year average in, and that's the discussion that we had last time, is to really look at it over multiple years.
We put in the 3 years, so we're not chasing that quarter,
Right.
you know, not chasing that carrot at the end of the stick. But the real idea here is the kids are accelerating and catching up.
Correct.
And they're getting to the minimum requirement. Let the high achieving kids go. Let them fly
Right.
off the charts. You know, I kind of changed my graph that I drew last week for Dr. Weber here at the break, saying it's just that the low achieving kids have to come up. They have to get to the minimum level.
Right.
We have to accelerate those guys. The high achieving ones, they can go wherever they want because they're well above the minimum requirement we need.
Right.
So on this one, I just want to see where we're at.
Yep.
And
I'll
make
work
sure
with-
we're not setting you up for failure.
Yep. Or creating a goal that's
Already
too
achieved.
easy.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so you'll take a look at the numbers
Yep,
with Mr.
yep.
Dinkelman.
So those first 4 goals focus on kind of the elementary and the middle school using 3-year averages for reading and math intervention. And so we'll get you that data to see if the numbers that we've identified here are the appropriate numbers.
And then for the number 5 there?
The number 5 is really focused on our high school intervention model, which is helping students earn credit towards graduation. And so we would be able to identify those students who are in our intervention program at the high school and ensuring that they're earning credit in at least 5 out of their 6 classes.
Okay.
This year, about 80% of the students were meeting.
Okay, so if we go up to 85 for next year, that's
stretching that.
stretching it.
To be highly
Change
effective.
the effective to say in the high school. It says
Oh,
high
got it.
school.
Okay. Good point. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's
Any-
district goal 1.
Any other questions on District Goal 1? No. Okay, well, we'll move on to District Goal 2.
Which is, the district goal 2 is that the Novi Community School District will provide innovative opportunities to develop the whole student that foster academic, social, and emotional growth. And so this is at some point, we're going to engage in a strategic plan. I think we need to look at the verbiage in this goal. But using this goal as it's written, we've identified some goals for the district. One would be to train K-4 teachers and administrators in trauma-informed classrooms. And so the goal would be that we're going to train, the goal would be to train all of our teachers. But we identify some ranges there for ineffective through highly effective. The second goal is that kindergarten students will participate in a survey to measure growth in social emotional learning in order to establish baseline data. So the DESA, as was mentioned, is a complementary piece to our second step curriculum.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that we understand it well and implement it well, and so that's why we've identified one grade level to start with that social emotional piece.
Okay.
Mr. O'Connor, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, so I'm confused by this because when you look at the measurements, it says over 9% of the students in grades 5 through 6 will 5 through 11 will participate in the survey.
Got it. I need to.
So
Because we
Versus
changed it to
kindergarten.
1 year, we didn't change the
I
metrics and
need to
stuff.
revise that.
okay, so then that brings up, so it is kindergarten. So that brings up my next question because I heard that in the presentation. Is having kindergarten students taking this to establish a baseline, is that a big enough sample size? I mean, should it be K? I'm just for discussion purposes.
Sure.
Should it be K through 2? Should we
Yep.
look at 3 grades,
I'll let Dr. Weber
or
kind
the
of
reason
address
for
that.
the 1 grade?
Yeah, so the reason on that is this tool that we're going to use, really we need to beta test it because it's not simply a survey as much as it's also an observational tool from our teachers to use. And what we need to find out is it's something that is doable from what you're saying in the K through 3 bandwidth. We're very comfortable with what we've done in the past 3 years, 5-12, and the data that's shown us. So that's why you're seeing it only in kindergarten because it's not something we've done. We don't want to jump headlong into something that we haven't used yet. Our hope is that it'll prove to be effective and really a nice measure and complementary to what Ms. Hoppenstedt was talking about tonight, which is our second step program and what we're doing with our social workers.
So then why kindergarten as the base instead of, if it's a beta test, I understand, why not first grade? Why not second grade?
Our belief is that if it works well with kindergarten, then we can continue to measure, we would have, next year we would measure them, we would move it up to first grade. And so we would have that kind of longitudinal data over time. And starting in kindergarten seems like a natural spot because that's when they first come into our district and we could measure their growth over time in social emotional areas.
Okay,
Good, thank you.
good questions. Anybody else have questions along those lines? Okay. Next, 3, age-appropriate social aggression. Is that where we're at?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll alter the
Yes.
data in the
Yep.
boxes there. Okay.
And we had kind of used this originally as kind of an anti-bullying initiatives, but we're kind of broadening that definition. As I mentioned last time, we have very few reported bullying incidents in the district. What we do have is more social aggression kind of incidents throughout the district that could be interpersonal within the school. It could be social media issues that come from outside the school into the school. And so this goal looks to ensure that at every level we'll have some social aggression initiatives that are implemented. It could be that it's part of our Leader in Me process at the K4, K6 bandwidth. It certainly fits with our OVEUS kind of work at the middle school, and then implementing some things at the high school with restorative practice, restorative circles, I think would, and again, I need to revise some of the language there that continues to say anti-bullying, but it's really a social aggression issue at this point.
Any additional dialogue on that particular point? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just one other quick, didn't we also talk about, with this school, there was going to be some kind of social aggression survey as part of a follow-up piece to this, or I don't know if it was part of the artifacts or something, didn't we talk about?
I do recall that. I'll look back at my notes and see.
I thought we talked about, not for the, I mean, the goal is fine, but I thought we were also talking about, as we were putting together, as we were making sure that we implemented these initiatives, I thought we were going to follow up with the survey about that as well.
We did move a couple things into artifacts and talked about other artifacts. We probably have those. We
So I'll
probably
look,
have
I'll
those.
look back at the notes and get the board some more information on that.
Okay, yeah. What things would be included. All right.
So district goal 3 is really.
Before we move
Yes.
off of that
Mhm.
district goal, because last year we had something on there with the second step
Mhm.
in getting data off of that,
Mhm.
and now we're just kind of,
It's, the second step piece is not included because it seems to be kind of institutionalized in the expectation that our social workers have is that they will use the second step curriculum. And so I didn't know if the board wanted to continue the goal when it would seem to be a goal that would be easily achieved because it's kind of become institutionalized.
So it's no longer a goal. It's a practice.
It's a practice.
the implementation of it, but the results of it would be what we should look at, I would think. You know, we've implemented it,
Yep.
we have a baseline of
So,
how effective
yeah,
it is.
so
and-
the question becomes, what's the impact of
Yeah.
that curriculum? And let me work with Ms. Hoppenstedt and maybe the social workers to identify, how could we craft a goal that would measure the impact that that's having within a building or within classrooms?
Either that, or would it not be appropriate to include that data in the artifacts so that we could see the impact of?
Of what? You know, we don't have a goal in here regarding.
We have
that.
we have social emotional growth as part of his. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Would it fit into another?
Well, let me talk to Ms. Hoppenstedt and Dr. Weber and the social workers and see if we, what kind of goal we could craft. Because, we've made the investment, and so the question then becomes, what is the impact that's having in the districts? Okay.
And I would support that because just as with this DESA, we're doing beta testing, we're just getting data to see what might be usable for the following year. Since this is a normal practice and everyone's using it, I support what Mr. Cook's saying.
Yeah.
It makes sense to just have a goal to see what the impact is and if we're moving the needle in that respect.
So let me.
It may be, what's feeding into number 3 as far as the social aggression.
Right.
So, if that's the case, then great, but we need to know the baseline and where we're at. And,
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation to try to figure out if there's a way, the danger, I'm not sure danger is the right word, but the confounding factor maybe is that social emotional is not as a consistent measure as academic achievement, for example, because social emotional, really depends on contextual factors in society, in a family, that have more variability and volatility than academic achievement does. And so the second step curriculum could be having an impact, but if you're looking at it from purely a numbers perspective, we may have more incidents in a third grade bandwidth this year just because of things that are going on in the community or in families in the district, and so we could demonstrate the benefit of it by we're responding to those incidents as they come up through the second set curriculum. But if you just look at it, the numbers may say we have more incidents, and so if you're just trying to measure are the incidents going down each year, that may not be the most appropriate way to measure.
We did touch base on that. Remember, we talked about the fact that it might change the way they report things.
Yeah,
And I thought we moved away from it for that reason, in part, because we were a little concerned that then the reported nature of things might be altered in order to
meet the
No,
goal.
that was something different. That was about reporting bullying.
Yeah.
That was all about reporting bullying.
That's why that was changed to social
Right,
aggression.
and that's why we went to social
Yeah.
aggression.
Okay.
I guess where I'm coming from is, and Mr. Cook, if you disagree, please say, I'd like to figure out, I agree with your argument, there are certainly other variables. I'd like to know if this curriculum is any good. I mean,
Right.
and you keep talking about the impact of the curriculum. I'm struggling with what that measurement might be, but I just have a concern that we've got all this data and now it's normal practice, and that's great. But is the curriculum good, or should we be doing something else? I mean, that's what,
Is it having an impact?
that's what this goal number 2 is all about. What's the impact?
Yes.
So I agree with the other variables.
Yep.
So maybe it's a measurement on the curriculum itself.
Yeah. So I think Ms. Hoppenstedt and Dr. Weber and Mr. Dinkelman and the social workers and I can have a conversation to try to sort through how do you demonstrate,
Quantify that.
quantify, in history, for example, you can tell if the curriculum's any good because they're learning history.
Right.
So in the second step curriculum, how do we quantify that we're having an impact?
Well, to me, it sounds like the board has made a move around the trauma-informed piece that it is going to be, that goal is based upon the amount of training we provide our staff. Something like second step, perhaps the goal is the amount of coverage that we're getting with that throughout the system. How many kids participate in it, and so on. To your point, Steve, about being able to quantify those type of numbers, perhaps it's a laudable goal to show to our community that while our many of our goals are empirical and you can base on those numbers, we also believe in the social emotional health of our children. And frankly, you look at our investments in things like Playworks, what we're doing with mindfulness, what we've invested in Leader in Me, what we've invested in the second step, what we've invested in restorative practices, what we've invested in all this. Those are all things that, to me as a parent with my son in this district, I feel really good about. I don't need to see a metric or a number that there were 2 less instances of this last year as there were to this year, that I know that my son is going to go through those, and that I have some kind of guarantee from you as a school board that he is going to see that second step curriculum in some way, right? That his teachers are going to be trained to identify not why is he misbehaving, but what has happened in his life that may cause that misbehavior, hence the trauma-informed. Again, go back to our presentation on technical versus adaptive. There are those technical things that we can do, but what we're really shifting to is the bigger adaptive piece and how we look at the whole child. I mean, obviously that's up to you all to determine, but I think trying to chase after a particular number on that, in my opinion, is something that is, as a parent, most parents, quite frankly, I want to know that we're doing something. 2 or 3 less instances one year,
2 or 3 more the next may not show the impact that the curriculum's having.
Yeah.
Mr. Conklin.
So I don't think that's what we're saying at all. I mean, if you want to have a participation objective, that's fine. I guess where I'm coming from is the education community is consistently has a flavor of the month in terms of what the curriculum is. Here's the new hot thing. So let's do this for 3 years and then we change it to something else. Here's the next flavor of the month. Is this second step stuff any good? Mm-hmm. Or is it this just the flavor of the month and we're going to change it in 2 or 3 years from now? Right. I mean, I'm more interested in is this a good curriculum?
Right. And it may be that we could get some qualitative data from the social workers about the impact that it's having, as opposed to just quantitative data. So that's a reasonable conversation, I think, to have.
You take it back and use Leader in Me as an example. That's a social emotional type program for the kids, and the benefit we're seeing from that, it's not the number of kids participating in it. We're seeing kids using their voice. We're seeing kids sticking up for each other. It's becoming it's becoming ingrained in the kids, and they're carrying that with them. So,
And that's qualitative.
that's qualitative.
Right.
That's what we're looking for. We're looking to see that these interventions and these tools that we're giving the kids during the intervention are becoming ingrained in them and are becoming part of them, so that it's not just a here and there. It's
and to Paul's point that it's not just at one school or in 2 classrooms, and to Dennis's point that we're staying consistent on it.
yes.
The part is, yes, education is a flavor of the month. I'm very proud to say, though, I think the monument turns 8 this May. Mm-hmm. We have not been a district in the past 8 or 9 years to jump from thing to thing to thing. Second step has been vetted. It is an approved SEL curriculum. We have looked at those pieces. Healthy skepticism, I think, is important. Like, we do need to make sure it's working in some way and is vetted, but we also have to have some faith that other people have vetted these things. So, again, to Paul's point, that consistency across our district is, to me, what's really important.
Okay, so you'll work on
Yep,
that?
we'll work on that.
To see if there's a way to find some qualitative
Now, District Goal 3 is that our district will be fiscally responsible by maintaining a minimum 10% fund balance while striving to maintain low class sizes. So these are identical to last year, the first two goals, that our fund balance will exceed 10%, and then 80% of our classes will meet class size benchmarks each year. And again, 80%, is I think a reasonable goal based on that kids don't come in neat packages of 22 or 25 or and so there's some volatility each year based on class sizes, but I think that's a reasonable goal. Now we did.
I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Yes, ma'am.
I think didn't we talk about not exceeding 10%? You say exceed, but the highly effective is that it will be 10% or greater. Okay. I don't know. I'm not going to quabble with words. That's fine. Sorry.
That's okay.
I know we had a lot of discussion
Yep.
around that piece last time.
And then the other three goals that we kind of addressed in the work session, we are pulling out, and those will become artifacts that will be part of the superintendent evaluation pieces that go in other components of the professional practice piece. The facilities assessment, safety audit, energy audit that we can do, as opposed to just doing them and saying that we completed them. They'll be measured in other ways in the superintendent evaluation as artifacts that we would provide.
So these will still be on your agenda for
Yes.
this year?
Yep.
And
Yep.
is
They'll-
part of...
They'll just be part of...
preparing whether we do a bond or not a
Correct.
bond.
Yep.
Have that data.
Yes. And then District Goal 4 is it will provide high-quality organizational and customer service to all stakeholders. So the first goal is the customer service goal. 80% of parents will report via survey positive interactions with office staff. Second is 80% of parental complaints will be addressed at the lowest possible level and not rise in the system. So this gets at ensuring that classroom teachers, building principals, and so on deal with the issues at the lowest possible level, so that parents aren't frustrated by that. And then we move to the artifact, the strategic planning process that we'll engage in, and then we had safety goals that our new staff will be trained, that safety drills will be completed, and that the number of scenario-based drills will increase over 2017-18.
All right, questions about those? Yes.
I want to thank you for adding that parental complaint. I mean, we've got to be careful on how we put together that survey.
Right.
But that's really strong that you added that. That's a good addition to this.
Okay.
So these goals, we'll revise them some, and then we'll bring them back to kind of final approval at the end of the month at our last meeting on the 27th. And these would be goals that we would then share with our building administrators, share with our the key stakeholders, so that we can work towards achieving these goals over the course of the year.
Okay. All right, well, moving on, this is our second opportunity for comments from the audience. We do still have an audience tonight, which is fantastic. If there is anyone that would like to address the board about anything within our jurisdiction, we would ask the same, that you'd fill out a green card, hand it to Mrs. Holly, and that you would approach the podium and state your name. And we limit your comments to 5 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Seeing no one, we will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. School started this week on Tuesday, September 4th. Our buildings were ready, staff was in place, and the weather, though hot, cooperated, and we had a successful opening day. I was able to visit every building and Dr. Weber visited every building, and we can report that things went very well. Started my morning at the bus garage, and they were ready to go and very excited, and so from all indications, we had a very successful opening day. Just as importantly, things have gone well in the 2 days since. And so, a lot of focus is on that first day, but the reality is that every day is very important, and the 2 days since have gone well as well. I would like to thank Dr. Kinzer and his human resource team for working hard to get the staff in place. We opened, I think, with, we had some FMLA leaves, we had long-term subs in place the very first day, and so his staff did a tremendous job. Ms. Minnick, business and operations staff, worked very hard to ensure that grounds and buildings and transportation, food service was ready. Dr. Weber in the Office of Academics did a wonderful job helping our staff focus through some outstanding professional development the week before. And more importantly, our building principals, teachers, secretaries, parapros, bus drivers, food service, and custodial staff also worked extremely hard to ensure that our schools were ready and that our first few days of school would be successful. So I'd like to thank everyone in the district for all the work they did to get us ready for school. The high school has a new express parent drop-off on the east side of the 10-mile student lot. And part of the parking lot reconstruction this summer reconfigured that parking lot and provided a more streamlined process for parents in the morning as they dropped off students. Reports for the first 3 days are that things seem to have gone very well so far. There are still parents going into the main entrance off of 10 Mile to the school, and what they're discovering is that it's very difficult to get back out onto 10 Mile Road. And so as parents go to that east side of that student lot, they're able to go in and use that light to come out, or they can go behind City Hall and go out the other exit from City Hall and turn right and move. There were some initial concerns that there would be backups that would block some of the subdivisions coming out. That hasn't really happened a lot. And the first few days of school are always a bit traumatic anyway, with people trying to figure out where to go and all those things, but it seems to have worked very well. Our high school administrative staff has been very good at being out there, kind of flagging people here, to make sure that they know about the new express opportunity, and so far it's been working very well. There is a Novi Educational Foundation Back to School Pancake Breakfast this Saturday, is second annual, from 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. It's going to be at Novi High School. There'll be lots of fun, and it raises money for a very good cause. Additionally, tomorrow night, Taste Fest is at the high school before the football game. Gates open at 5 p.m. There'll be plenty of food and activity until 10 p.m. And also there will be a football game that starts at 7 p.m. tomorrow night as well. And then finally, there will be a Novi Community School District Board of Education candidate forum on October 11th here at the ESB at 7 p.m. And we will also make sure that that is taped and broadcast. The candidates, the League of Women Voters is hosting that, and the candidates have all been invited to participate in that on October 11th at 7 p.m. That's my report for this evening.
Terrific, thank you. Mr.
I just want to make a comment that as a member of the League of Women Voters, the candidates will be very happy to know that I will not be involved in that Novi candidate forum.
All right. Next, we have our administrative report.
Did Mr. Smith have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I heard from a local resident that lived in the Jamestown subdivision, and their concern was, did the high school pay attention to increased cars making that right-hand turn? Were you aware that question came up?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And we had, we made that switch based on recommendations from engineering.
Public, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't just us making that.
Because her student walks to school,
Right.
and he crosses at that light, and the parent's concern was, with the new express being moved over there was going to be more cars turning.
Right, where those students cross at that light.
Correct.
And one of the issues is, we're going to monitor that and see if there's
Okay.
a need for a crossing guard. But also, high school students have been crossing there at 10 Mile and Taft, for example.
Correct.
A lot of cars kind of buzz through there as well.
That speed's an issue.
And our high school students have historically navigated that well. So we're anticipating that they will navigate there as well, but we're going to monitor that to make sure. Because as the seasons progress, it gets darker in the mornings, and so we just need to make sure that our students can walk safely to school.
Well lit, okay.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Next, we have our administrative reports. Ms. Minnick.
Thank you, President Murphy. Good evening. As Dr. Matthews mentioned, the school year is off and running, but two things I'd like to bring to your attention. The State of Michigan bus inspectors are on site. They started on Tuesday, first day of school.
Oh, wow.
And once we have that report back, I will certainly report out to the board on those results. Secondly, our external auditors are on site. They, too, arrived on Tuesday, first day of school, and they'll be on site this weekend next. And once that audit report is prepared, it will be reported out to the board likely in November.
Okay, fantastic. You had a busy First, start to the school year. Thank you. Dr. Kinzer.
On-
I'm sorry, Mr. O'Connor.
Just a quick
comment?
question, I know it's early, but do we have any early projections on student enrollment in terms of what we budgeted versus what's coming in?
It appears that we have exceeded our budgeted increase. We budgeted for a 40 student increase, and at this time, it looks like we're doing very well, potentially doubling that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Smith. Dr. Kinzer.
On August 23rd, we welcomed 38 new teachers into the district at our new teacher orientation, and I had worked a little bit with each of those new hires through the hiring process, but after spending an entire day with the group, I was most impressed with the quality of our new hires, and I think that's a credit to our hiring process that Mrs. Diglio worked so hard to implement, as well as the role that our building principals, as well as Shaylee Patel and Stacy Theophilus, played in executing the plan and really allowing us to hire very high quality new teachers. So I'm pleased with that. I also wanted to just congratulate Dr. Weber and our Office of Academics, Administrators, and Staff for Impact 18, which was incredible. There was such a comprehensive assortment of high quality professional development offerings presented by administrators, teachers, staff, students, and as well as some people outside the district. I attended several sessions, and the quality in each of them was of the highest level. So congratulations, Dr. Weber and your staff.
Thank you. And Dr. Question? Go
Yep.
ahead.
Oh, Mr. Cook has a question.
You've been keeping an eye on our two schools that were close on Village Oaks and,
Yeah.
and Parkview. How are those?
It looks, I think we're going to be fine with sections. We do have a physical education posting that ran out today at Village Oaks to help spread out numbers in the specials. But in our grade level classrooms, I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
Okay, good question. And Mr. Smith, did you have a question too? Okay, I apologize. Dr. Weber.
I would concur on the hiring part, having been in many classrooms in the past couple of days. I was remarking to Jill, Steve, and Gary that ran into a couple fourth grade teachers, and they said, what's going on with these new people you're hiring? It's like they're making it look easy in their first 2 days. And that's a testament to the people that you've been able to find and that our people have been able to find. It's a real joy to see our kids having that opportunity to be taught by such high quality folks. Impact did occur last week. Without a team that I love dearly, it would have never come off, especially Melissa Matson, Melanie Rakowski, Jeff Dinkelman, Alice Smith, Darby Hoppenstedt, just absolutely throwing down to make it happen. Over 54 of our own staff presenting during it. For the board and the community to know, every single staff member, I mentioned at the podium, went through a capacity building on wellness and well-being themselves. Again, trying to do everything we can to, and this is why I pushed back a little bit on that goal. It should be enough in my mind that we're attending to these things and that we're guaranteeing opportunities for our kids. Trying to measure a few numbers is something that I think is worthy of our discussion. Today I had a fantastic conversation with a gentleman who runs Macy's at 12 Oaks, Mr. Paul Carlson. And I had mentioned before, I believe in a board meeting, Macy's has donated $10,000 to our incubator class. $6,000 of that money going to the incubator class will be going to creating a telepresence space. $4,000 to, and this was confirmed today, a product or service that our kids at Novi High School come up with will be sold at the largest retailer in the nation, which is Macy's. And any money that our kids make of that will go back into the incubator course to seed that for the next group of kids that are being there. Mr. Carlson will be meeting with our incubator kids next Wednesday to talk about retail, strategy, how to do these things. We're looking for the launch of a product or service in February. So a ton of gratitude to Mr. Carlson as well as to Macy's, and really terribly excited to see what comes out of that. And really, that's it. I think you probably heard enough from me tonight.
Thank you. Great things happening. Good to hear everything went so smoothly. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask Dr. Weber,
I intended to at the last meeting and I missed it. So this has been out there for a couple months now. I don't know if it's a realignment of our social studies. So the Michigan Department of Education has participated in, with other states to, I'll say realign, I don't know if that's the right word, our social studies curriculum. And I knew there were meetings. In fact, one conflicted with one of our board meetings. They had at Oakland Schools. It was a presentation on, forum. So they're asking for online commentary from parents. And I went in and looked at some of the questions, and I wasn't able to answer them, but I did look at the before and after, the red line documents of the changes in the social studies curriculum. But what I wanted to ask is what you thought as a curriculum, as our resident curriculum expert, what you thought about those.
So this is loaded. Give me a sec. So the first piece that I would say is that an indication of the community response to this would be that it was June 30th is when public comments were supposed to close. That's been extended to September 30th. I know I saw on Twitter that there's one coming up in Detroit, and I just pulled up the MD webpage. It looks like King High School on September 13th.
Right.
The others are Marquette, which is a heck of a drive, on the 18th of September, University Center of Gaylord on the 19th of September, and Central Michigan University. Social studies is near and dear to my heart. That's what I taught. That's what I got into teaching for. And really the strengths of the curriculum are based on, that I see, are an emphasis on more questioning, evaluating, and evidence. So I think the curricular changes and the shifts that have made, to me, make a lot of sense. What I'm hearing, or what people are going to these meetings and they're concerned about, is there are removals of certain aspects. Climate change is a part of the conversation, I know. Also, core democratic values being changed to core values, the democratic part being pulled out of it, has raised concern among certain people as well. I think there have also been changes in areas of civil rights. I haven't attended one of the meetings. Now with this question, I may go to the one at King to find out. What I know is social studies is a fantastic platform in which to teach the things that I think that they're doing really well in their questioning, evaluating evidence, and so on. And the more that they can do with that, the better. If public comment is done on September 30th, my guess is that we're going to see some sort of Board of Education vote at the state level October. Dr. Matthews, what do you think?
Before the end of the calendar year, I would think.
Is what they're going to do. So that's really what I know now. Without any further, I can go in and provide the board with some more perspective on it, but that's my perspective from my seat.
So at some point, maybe we can expect that you will tell us how this will impact our current curriculum. Should it become?
It's been going on for some time, and so what we've done is stayed with in our Atlas piece those things that have been part of the core social studies curriculum for some time. We haven't jumped ahead into the C3, which is the name for this new piece, which is College, Career, and Civic Life Framework for Social Studies. And we've been waiting for dispensation from the state.
Okay. Well, yeah, keep us posted on the changes that might come down the line for us. And certainly, obviously, if parents are interested in going down to King High School to find out more about it.
No, they can also go on the MD website and look it up and read everything, as Trustee Hood has done. I started doing. There's a survey in there for parental or board or whomever.
Okay, fantastic.
Back again, so.
Fantastic. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. All right, other board communication. That's what we're at on our agenda.
So I just want to state that Kathy Hood and Tom Smith and I and Dr. Matthews met a few weeks ago regarding the merit pay committee. We're still discussing the criteria for the merit pay. We have another meeting scheduled this coming Monday, and hopefully within the next couple meetings we will come back with a recommendation for the board.
Okay. And if other board members want to provide any feedback to you, they can
send me
information to you.
I can give a little feedback, given that we might have 40 additional students coming in enrollment, that certainly is additional revenue based on what was projected in our budget.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Meta?
Yeah, we did have a capital projects meeting last week, and first of all, I do want to thank Ms. Minnick and your predecessor, Steve Barr, because it's become very apparent that this district has been extremely fiscal responsibility in the spending of our 2014 bond dollars, so thank you very much for that. We did review all the improvements that we completed as promised, and we discussed and prioritize some areas of improvements that we are considering adding with the remaining funds, and I believe that'll be coming before the board for discussion in the very near future.
It's a good meeting. Yeah, thank you for providing quite a recap of everything that happened as a result of that bond, which is fantastic. Other board communication?
Well, the Finance Committee has not met, but we look forward to meeting when the audit's done.
Okay, so that'll probably be late October, early November when you meet again. Other board members' communication? All right, I did see that on September 12th of next week, there's an opportunity for board members to participate in helping the Michigan Association of School Boards set their legislative priorities for the coming year, and I do plan to attend. If anybody else wants to go with me, I would love somebody to go with me out to Oakland County, but just to talk to them. It's really opportunity to really have some feedback into what kind of energy our advocacy, the group that advocates on behalf of all of us and all the students in the districts that are under them, and kind of setting the priorities for that. So they're meeting a lot of different places around the state, but Oakland schools, the closest one to us, I believe, is on the 12th.
It should be noted that historically, the Oakland County School Boards Association really ignores that meeting and sets their own priorities. But
Well, a lot
we
of
participate.
time they do some of it coincides with what they're doing in the
Sometimes.
state. Yeah. Additional?
I'd like to give a shout out to Evolve. My son said the thing he was looking forward to the most this school year was the food. So.
Was he a broccoli lover?
There you go.
Actually, no. The green things on his plate don't mix well normally. But, he was looking forward to that, and I'm glad to see we have plenty of other opportunities with the Taste Fest tomorrow night and the pancake breakfast on Saturday. So, yeah, I just want to thank Yvonne for what she's been doing in all the schools to meet the requirements that have been thrown at her, and making sure that kids get the food they need. So.
Fantastic. All right, our next meeting will be a work session that is on the 13th.
Correct.
So we will start at 6 o'clock that evening, and Mrs. Holly, I'm sure, will arrange some dinner for us, because a lot of us will be coming straight, many people will be coming straight from work or not have time. So we will begin that day, and we will go over, I think you guys all got a copy of the policy manual that we started on almost a year ago. At least voted to move forward with a new policy provider. And that information I would encourage you to look over before the meeting, and we will be going through that with Mr. Sutton, who went through it with our Board Governance and Policy Committee. So on that, I believe I need
Move to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn. It's been moved by Mr. Cook, supported by Mr. Smith. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned for the evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.